Hi, I'm Mr. New Jersey, and today I want to talk about Thomas Nast, America's most influential political cartoonist. Nast's cartoons affected everything from the symbols we use for political parties to the way we picture Santa Claus. Thomas Nast was born in Germany in 1840, and that's where he spent his earliest years. But his father was very politically liberal, which ran against the German government at the time. As a result, the Nast family moved to New York City when Thomas Nast was 6. Thomas went against the wishes of his family by focusing on art when they wanted him to learn a more practical skill. Yet Thomas's decision paid off in 1854, when he was given the opportunity to study with Theodor Kaufmann, a fellow German immigrant and prominent artist. Nast began his career as a cartoonist for newspapers and magazines, working for several different publications over the years, though his most famous work would ultimately be with a publication called Harper's Weekly. Nast got married in 1861, and would go on to have 5 children. During the Civil War, Nast was a strong supporter of Abraham Lincoln and the Union war effort. He published numerous patriotic cartoons in Harper's, which were credited with bolstering public support for the war and increasing Union recruitment. Lincoln himself once referred to Nast as America's best recruiting sergeant. After the Civil War, Nast went on to use the power of his cartoons to attack various politicians he didn't like. Nast's most famous battle was against boss William Tweed, who ran New York City through his incredibly corrupt Tammany Hall political machine during the 1860s. The machine was famous for activities like bribery, voter fraud, and stealing millions of dollars from city coffers. It relied heavily on support from the city's impoverished, newly arrived, and poorly educated Irish immigrant community. Thomas Nast's attacks on Tweed through cartoons were revolutionary, in large part because even illiterate Irish immigrants could understand their implications. A particularly famous example is a cartoon of Boss Tweed with his head replaced by a giant money bag. Tweed himself once said that he didn't care about negative written news reports since his constituents couldn't read, but he hated Nast's pictures. Eventually, Nast began to receive threats as a result of his fight against New York City's most powerful figures, so he and his family moved to Morristown, New Jersey, seeking safety. By the late 1960s, public support for the Tweed ring was starting to crumble, and soon enough, concrete evidence of the machine's corruption emerged. Many Tweed loyalists lost their elections in 1871. In the ensuing years, Tweed and many members of his ring were put on trial, convicted, and sentenced to prison. Boss Tweed himself actually escaped from prison at one point and fled to Spain. However, Tweed was recognized and captured by Spanish authorities because they recognized Tweed from a Nast cartoon. So, due to Nast's spot-on drawing skills, Tweed was caught and extradited to the United States, where he ultimately died in prison. Even after helping tear down New York's super-powerful Tweed ring, Nast still wasn't done drawing about American politics. His cartoons helped shape public opinion for 2 decades of presidential elections, from 1864 to 1884, and generally speaking, Nast was a strong supporter of the Republican Party. Thomas Nast picked up a character often used to personify the U.S. government, Uncle Sam, and used this Uncle Sam in several of his cartoons, contributing to the popularity of the character. Importantly, Nast is the primary reason that the Democratic Party uses a donkey as its symbol, and the Republican Party uses an elephant. Nast didn't invent the symbols per se, but their uses had only been fleeting before he arrived on the scene. Nast picked up the 2 little-known symbols and used them repeatedly in his work, until the animals became commonly associated with the parties in the minds of Americans. In fact, the animals became so recognizable that the parties themselves eventually started to use them. This is ironic because Nast's cartoons using the animals were largely meant to make fun of the parties. Nast presented the Republican Party elephant as a big, lumbering beast that struggled to maneuver properly under its own weight, and he portrayed the Democratic donkey as a disgraceful, wild creature that was constantly jumping and kicking things. Another key contribution that Nast made to American and world culture was his depiction of Santa Claus, which is still the version of Santa we show to children today, with his thick coat, plump chest, and iconic beard. Nast first began drawing Santa Claus during the Civil War as part of his propaganda, showing Santa giving gifts to Union soldiers. Yet Nast continued to draw Santa Claus even after the war was done, creating 33 Santa cartoons in total over the course of his life. Nast's timing with these cartoons was impeccable. He lived right around the time that Christmas was transitioning from a lackluster religious holiday into a fun, gift-giving one with decorations and cute traditions. So, Nast's version of Santa got wrapped right into the growing holiday, and became the popular version of Santa that everyone now knows. Sadly, Nast made bad financial decisions later in his life, and fell heavily into debt. President Theodore Roosevelt heard about Nast's misfortunes, and decided to help him out by appointing him as the United States Consular General in Ecuador. Tragically, less than a year into his position, Nast got caught up in a yellow fever epidemic, and thus died in Ecuador on December 7, 1902. Today, Nast's legacy remains alive through the many popular images he gave us of the Democratic donkey, the Republican elephant, and of course, Santa Claus. If you want to see some of Nast's work, head on over to the McCulloch Hall Museum in Morristown, New Jersey. McCulloch Hall has the largest collection of original Nast artwork in the U.S. The hall is also a historic house museum, which tells the stories of some of Morristown's important families. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Thomas Nast. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to find out when I release more videos on the New Jerseyans who have helped make America the place that it is. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.